And welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I'm Warren. Welcome. It is the 15th of April, 2026. It's Wednesday. That means it's time for me to talk about professional wrestling for a couple of hours right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application, wherever it is that you are tuning in. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a like here on this video or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or 5-star rating on Spotify, that would be tremendous as well. Very, very much so. We've got ourselves a pretty big show. I'm pretty sure most of you are here rubbing your hands together going, ha, it is the Dynasty review, AEW Dynasty. Well, yes, I guess that would be the feature attraction this week. That's indeed what we're going to be talking about. A couple of other topics, including the Carlos Silva saga this week, where he was pulling his talent from independent shows. We are going to be talking about that with great gusto and a couple of other things. So there we go. We got ourselves a good little show here tonight, today, whenever you're listening to this. So let's get right to it. Thank you very much for being here. All right, let's review AEW Dynasty 2026 that occurred on April 12, 2026, over there in Vancouver, beautiful British Columbia, at the Rogers Arena, in which a good amount of my fellow Canadians showed up to see the show. 9,081 tickets distributed according to WrestleTix. That would be its final count. That was some kind of magic number I think they wanted to hit, was 9,000. They just got over the hump. So good attendance for the show. Especially if you compare to the last time AEW came for a Collision, which was not last year, but in 2024, May 11, 2024 was the last time that AEW was in the venue. 6,643 tickets were distributed. So you do expect your higher quality pay-per-views to draw a little more. And if you compare it year over year to last year's Dynasty, at the Liacouras Center, I hope I pronounced that right. I am always unsure on how to pronounce the Liacouras Center. And I can pronounce the names of Japanese wrestling venues just like that. But for some reason, Liacouras, which is, a word, a name that makes perfect sense in my native tongue of English, I struggle with it. I hope I'm not, but I do feel like I am. Anyway, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is where the Liacouras Center is. 7,921 tickets were distributed last year. So a big upgrade. One would argue that the card this year was better than last year's Dynasty. I would argue that. And I think one would argue that AEW is in a better place than it was last year. I, for instance, would also argue that. But we're not breaking down the entire perception of AEW, not on this review. We got more than enough stuff to talk about because we are going to break down this show here, Dynasty 2026. Another excellent AEW pay-per-view. I mean, it's almost like a broken record at this point. But if you were coming in here to listen to some cutting takes on how awful the show has been, well, this is not the place. I had such an enjoyable time watching this show. Just another excellent offering from AEW, which flew by, legitimately flew by. I even posted about it on social media. I was like, is it just me, or is this show just like scooting by? I'm looking down at the clock and I'm like, holy smokes, we're like 2 hours in. This, when I was in the main card, once we're in the main card, like 2 hours in, I'm like, man, this is easy breezy. This is great. I thought the show was really well paced. The wrestling, as usual, was top notch. But I have no complaints. Like I said, if you're coming in here for, someone to say, well, this was, I didn't like this and the selling here was awful, you're at the wrong place. You're especially at the wrong place if you're coming in to listen to someone talk about the runtime of the show. Because this is always what happens with AEW shows. This is always what happens. It's always the same fucking discourse. The next day, or even the night of, right? Or even the day of, even in the lead up, people are saying, complaining about all these matches, but it's always there. And I cannot fathom coming out of a show like this and your first reflex, like the first stuff that starts coming out of your mouth, that you build your recap, your review, your post show, and start talking about, let's talk about the length. I can't relate. I can't relate to anyone who does that. And not only can't I relate, I do not want to relate, because the more honest conversation to have in this circumstance here is how much this show flew by. How about how a hot Vancouver crowd throughout the show really kept the energy alive, keeping even the people at home engaged in it, sustained from the pre-show all the way to the main event. That's a good conversation to have. That's a good thing to talk about. Not spend like 7 minutes of your 30-minute review talking about pay-per-view length, and airing on a Sunday night, and having to put the kids to bed and getting up early for the morning, and then feeling bad for the people in the venue and whatnot. I here I am myself, like talking too much about it, right? Because for me it's as well. It's always a broken record, because I sincerely believe this. Every time we're confronted with an AEW pay-per-view, and the first thing reviewers start talking about, well, our fucking long show. This is and will always be a content creator problem, first and foremost, because most content creators want to pump out as much content as possible. They want to get as much stuff out there. And if they're stuck, not recording, not writing, and just stuck for 5 hours watching a thing, then that's a detriment to them. Then it's problematic for them, because then they have to watch other things during the course of the week, and they have to watch Raw, they have to watch NXT, they have to watch Dynamite. You know what I mean? That's the conundrum that exists for them, because I legitimately believe that for AEW fans, for wrestling fans, but particularly for AEW fans, I don't think they necessarily have a problem with it. It is an issue that nonetheless comes up. It is something that does come up, let's say, in Jesse Collins' fan survey, which I broke down with him on a recent episode of his podcast, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. It is an element that comes up, but it's not the prevalent issue that AEW fans have with the promotion. The prevalent issue that AEW fans have with the promotion is the lack of women's wrestling. That is the thing that just permeates throughout the survey. Not it's too long and so on and so forth, despite the fact that there are people who express that. And I can understand, regular Joe, just having issues, especially if you go to the venue, it's super late at night, and then there's traffic to get out of there. And if you use your car, well, you got to, it's lineups to get out of the parking lot, or if you're taking public transportation, that's probably a mess as well. So I can sympathize with all of that. Don't get me wrong. But I still think that content creators who come on and start complaining about that it is a them problem. And it is and I wish more of them realized just how much their complaints about this comes from a place of privilege, because they are paid to watch pro wrestling and then either, open up the laptop and then crack open a Google Docs and start typing their thoughts, or firing up OBS and talking into a microphone for how much long they want to do it. And they get paid to do this. If you are paid to sit down and watch pro wrestling and then talk about it after, you are talking from a place of privilege. You are talking, you have a job that hundreds of people out there would love to say, my 9 to 5 is consuming pro wrestling and then talking about it on the internet. And I think it lacks self-awareness when you do that as a paid content creator. I think it lacks awareness. I'm not saying that there isn't a discussion to be had around AEW's the length of AEW pay-per-views. I'm not saying that this is a discussion that shouldn't exist. What I'm saying is that this should not be your lead. You should not be spending, 20% of your podcast bemoaning how long it is and so on and so forth, when AEW fans seem overall to be okay with it because we just put nearly 10,000 fans into a building to watch it, and they should pretty much know how long a show is by now. And the show's going to do like anywhere between 130 to 150,000 buys, something like that, right? On pay-per-view. So clearly these issues are not necessarily reflective into the market where things are going rather swimmingly, that people are actually but this has always been the case with the pay-per-views, but like for the streaming one, people are tuning in more. People are watching more AEW than they had in a while. So like to me, it's and honestly, I challenge any of my peers out there to not do that. I challenge them to use like the 7 minutes of your 30-minute podcast that you'd waste talking about this to actually talk about the matches instead. Because the day Tony Khan decides that, well, you know what, we're going to do 7 matches instead of 11. Well, you're going to be 7 minutes out of luck, pal. You're going to be 7 minutes out of your usual content that'll be gone, and you probably won't know what to do with it because you will not have warmed yourself up to the idea of talking about pro wrestling more, giving your thoughts on a wrestling show other than, well, this was too long, and going off about it for 7 fucking minutes. And I'm using 7 as a very arbitrary number. It equates to about 20% of a 30-minute review, right? So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. It's just a thought. It's funny because it's never like the lead is never like AEW pay-per-views are the surest, best value in professional wrestling, North American pro wrestling today, right? It's never that comes forward. It's never those lines that are spoken, except for maybe people like me, people like the guys over on the flagship, and and other people that that gravitate around the Voices of Wrestling network, and so there is a circle of people, but like the big podcasts on the big networks, on the serious satellite radios, they don't talk about AEW pay-per-views for what they are, for being excellent top to bottom, action-packed professional wrestling that is the greatest value for your money you can find in the United States today in professional wrestling. That's never something that comes up. And yet it is an observable, quantifiable thing. Instead, they'll be like, it's too long. Yeah, the pay-per-view was good, but it was too long. I'm going to tell you, I wasn't bored for a second last night. I was not bored because I'm recording this on Monday. That's why I said last night. I wasn't bored for a second during the show. Like bored, like outright bored, like struggling to not like fire up my phone and start doom scrolling kind of thing. Like that. No, I did not reach that point at any given moment. I was compelled by what was going on. But you know what? Even if they don't talk about it, even if they don't say it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the catalog is there. The proof is there. It's undeniable. It is the most consistent. AEW pay-per-views are the most consistently great professional wrestling shows out there. It's been like this for a couple of years now. And we don't have to keep saying it because we keep getting the evidence to back it up. And Dynasty just happens to add itself in here. And it's a B show, right? It's the B pay-per-view. It's not one of the 5 big pay-per-views that AEW has. It's a B show. It's essentially a B show. And what I think helped achieve this was the lack of gimmicks. The lack of gimmick matches specifically. That's what I'm trying to say. The lack of gimmick matches, I think, really contributed here. There were no Texas death matches, no strap matches, no ladder matches, no I quits, no street fights. It was a show that was built on what AEW does best, and that is professional wrestling matches, professional wrestling action. Just wrestling match after wrestling match, and the wrestling was good enough to show that you don't need, Tony, to stack your pay-per-views with a bunch of bells and whistles. I think the absence of match-type crutches helped the show tremendously. And when everything earns its drama through the work itself, the cumulative effect is undeniable. It's real. It's that we saw it. We saw it in this throughout the show. I mean, the entire card from the Bucks against the Don Callis family all the way to the main event was a consistent run of quality as AEW has delivered and continues to deliver. Kevin Knight winning the TNT Championship was an unexpected but crowd-pleasing call that makes a lot of sense. FTR retaining, there was so much on the show. The main event had all the ingredients as well. We'll get to that. Maybe it didn't cook as hard. We'll get to that though in a few. But even that match was good. AEW continues to be the best place for American pro wrestling in 2026. And Dynasty is proof of it. Dynasty is the setup here. And look, yes, the show was long, but I didn't care in the slightest, because if I'm entertained, if you can captivate me for such a long period of time, it is my pleasure to sit down and say it didn't matter that the show finished past 12:30 midnight. And yes, the show finished after midnight. It was a long show, but you know what? I didn't see it go by. This show managed to keep me engaged and entertained throughout the entirety of it. I have no qualms. I have no issues. I've got nothing to complain about, and in regards to how this entire show was put together. Minimal things, small things, but nothing that makes me upset or want to flip a table and say this shit sucked. Absolutely not. Why don't we get to it then? Let's start talking about the card. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take the 2 biggest matches that were on this show, like the 2 that were the best built, that had big stakes, that felt important, and also included 4 of the biggest stars in the promotion, right? So we'll take MJF versus Kenny Omega, and we'll review it back to back with Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay. And there's a reason why I want to put them back to back. And then from there we'll do the rest of the card. That's how I'd like to approach it, because you'll see how it all comes together. There's a reason why I want to review them back to back. And so let's go ahead. The structure is all set up for the review. I hope you're comfortable with it. If not, play them in whatever order you want. But this is how my train of thought is going to go here tonight. MJF successfully retained the AEW World Championship, the Men's World Championship, by defeating Kenny Omega, who started off the match, and he was so fired up when he was coming down to the ring. Kenny was, right? He was so fired up, and you know how Kenny can get sometimes, how he's very casual, very relaxed. That's part of his persona, where he's just a chill dude, type of thing. He's a little quirky. He's a chill dude. And this was not what we got. We got a Kenny Omega who was coming down and he was psyched and he was fired up and you could feel it. And it was like, fuck yeah. All right. Let's go. God of pro wrestling, cleaner. Let's go, cleaner. God of cleaning. Let's go. Like, this is what I want to hear. That was the vibe I got here, right? And MJF comes out and he's doing the whole devil thing with, and he's it's like, I love Max, and he's got this setup, this getup. Like, first of all, it seems to me it had been a while since we'd seen the Cody Vader, and Max used it to do the throne thing coming up. And then on his jacket, his ring jacket, he's got like an upside down cross, and he's got 666 all over it. I'm like, oh my God. But that's it. That's Max trying too hard. That's exactly what it is, right? And then the match hit. And like everything on this show, as you'll see, this was a big, physical, hard-hitting match. Credit to both guys, consistent with the night's identity, theme, Both guys are dropping like really big moves on each other. We got some, Alabama slams and Snapdragon suplexes and, great rise of the Terminators by Kenny and a Crossroads, which got some big boos from the audience, and a package pile driver. And there were legitimately some scary spots throughout all of this, right? Kenny throughout the match attempted multiple times to land a one-winged angel on Max, and eventually did by landing an avalanche one, but he nearly dropped MJF from his shoulders as he was climbing up the turnbuckles to try to land the move. He did land the move as well, but it's just very, very scary stuff. I want to give Kenny a lot of credit for working hard in this match, because we've all started to treat him like a porcelain doll to a degree because of the injury that they keep hammering home. That being said, talking about how his his career is on borrowed time. The clock is ticking on Kenny Omega's in-ring career. But it's still obvious to me watching this that he's still tough as nails, and he can still go. And he will not break as easily as we think he will. At least I hope not. Unless he's very, very good at it, right? And I thought his selling here in the match of the gut, when he really started getting worked over in the gut, Max does the kitchen sink on him and then just pummels him into the stomach, which was fantastic. Kenny does a great job because he's not overselling it. He's not being overly grotesque with it. It feels like a very competitive fighter way of selling it, just like holding on instead of doubling over and always being and holding it. He's just like putting some pressure on it with his forearm. I really like that. And look, I mentioned it. Max is excellent at what he does. MJF here, just a terrific heel, better pro wrestler than he gets credit for. People want him to get beat. And frankly, for a few minutes in this match, I thought that was going to happen. Despite the fact that I myself, coming into this match, was telling everyone who wanted to listen, there's no way MJF is dropping the title. Like, he's hanging on to this sucker all the way to the Wembley show. But as this match was going on, and listening to the crowd, and being in Canada, and Canadians having a very up to this point having a very poor success rate, a very, very poor success rate as far as victories go, I was like, well, maybe Kenny is going to do it. And then I start formulating in my mind where I'm like, world champion Kenny Omega is still fucking awesome. Like, it's no downgrade from Max. It's just it would throw me for a loop. Wouldn't be the first time AEW does that. And I'd be shocked to see how this goes. And that's what, that's not what happened, but I had bought into it at some point during this match where this could actually happen because both guys were doing such a good job. And those are the main positives that I want to bring out of this match, because I liked the match. I really did. I thought it was a very good match, but not an excellent match. I don't think this, I have seen people, give ungodly amounts of praise for this match. And I'm like, did we really watch the same thing? I don't know if it's just because it's Kenny, just because it's AEW and there's a little bias. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know why, but I did not like this match as much as a lot of other people did. Now let's underscore this straight out of the gate here to make sure we don't have any misconceptions. I liked this match. I thought it was a very good match. I did not hate this match in any shape or form, but my floor for this match was great, and that's not what happened. That's not what happened. And I'll try to break down why I didn't think the match was as good as a lot of people are making out to me, or at least look. Never mind the other people, Warren. How about you point out why you thought this wasn't as great? Never mind others. Okay, I'll do that. First of all, I think the main issue is that the match was too long. I think it would have benefited from being a tighter package, first and foremost. I didn't think it had a good flow. For the majority of the match, it felt like Max and Kenny were just landing a series of moves on each other rather than trying to hurt each other, if that makes sense. I feel like it was more like some one-upsmanship other than these guys having a fight, trying to hurt each other. Again, if that makes sense. It just felt disconnected. There were sequences, don't get me wrong, there were sequences in this match that were genuinely excellent, right? Where there was these sudden bursts where I was like, oh shit. And I'm even going, all right, here comes the other gear. Another gear we never reached, by the way. And the avalanche One Winged Angel was it's still imprinted in my mind because of how scary it was to set up, and then the payoff was fantastic. But those moments were islands in a match that struggled with rhythm and structure. I can't in good conscience call this an excellent match. I really don't think it was. It was well worked. And these guys put in tons of effort. They really did. They gave a lot in this, right? It had heat. It had really cool moments, but it underdelivered as far as my expectation goes. And maybe that's part going into it, right? Maybe part of it is my own damn fault for going into for expecting for having such a high ceiling. Going into a main event with two excellent wrestlers that carry with them this high floor expectation, right? Kenny and MJF specifically raises that floor. And it's a very good match from these two guys can feel like an undelivery, which I'm completely okay with that. Like, I'm completely okay if my own expectations are tainting my overall feelings, because I sincerely believe that a big main event that is hyped that way, that is built to be a big time thing with technically your two best guys on your roster at that very given moment, I think the expectation should be a great match as a fan. And as a reviewer, I think it's reasonable to have that expectation going in. And I think that if it doesn't deliver to that level, then it's another problem. The opposite is just as true. When we have a pre-show match that has zero expectation, but suddenly you're like, wow, this fucking rocks, and this is a 3 3/4 star match, and you praise it and you're raising the roof and you're going, this was such a great pre-show match. But again, like, not excellent, not a 5-star match, but a good 3.5, 3 3/4 star match. And you're like, this fucking rules. What a great match. But it was on the pre-show, and your expectations are adjusted on that level. And I feel like it's the kind of thing that is generally better perceived by fans in general. When you criticize things that way, you'll say, when you come out and you say, oh man, that went above my expectations, people will go, hell yeah, that ruled, right? Whereas applying the same logic to something in which you have high expectations, but they don't reach those high expectations, then that's perceived more as a negative. Then fans will have a tendency to listen to a review or read a review like that and say, oh, well, the reviewer's expectations were too high. And yet the lowered expectations are okay. And again, I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's reasonable, and it makes a lot of sense for someone reviewing a show that has MJF versus Kenny Omega in the main event to have a high floor expectation. I think that's completely okay. And for me, they didn't hit that floor. I think they went under it, despite it being a good match, a very good match, not even close to a bad match. Is it a lack of chemistry between MJF and Kenny that led us to this? Possibly. That might also be a thing. I think my other diagnoses were a little more on the money. I feel comfortable with the reasons I pointed out. The chemistry is difficult. It's a little more of an intangible, but it did feel like those two guys had trouble getting on the same page. Honestly, when it comes to that, I don't have the answer. And overall, I'm more perplexed than anything else with how this match went down. Just because it did not soar like I thought it should, and I'm sure maybe even you as well. And reasonable minds can disagree here. You might actually right now be in the comments typing away with your thumbs, with your fingers, if you have a lovely desktop keyboard, or on your laptop. You might be right now saying, Warren, you're out to lunch, brother. This match, was a big emotional thing for me. I thought it was awesome. And I'm like, all right, good for you. We'll disagree. We'll disagree on what we considered emotional wrestling. I'll give you an example in very, 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 very shortly as to emotions that are brought out in wrestling. And not that I didn't feel anything at all during this match. Like I said, there's this one sequence in this match where, Max he's slapping Kenny across the face disrespectfully, just booting him in the face, right? And that fires Kenny up. The crowd comes alive. He hits a V-trigger, and the crowd goes one more time. And I swear to God, MJF, because Max pulled him up, to sort of do another move. And I swear, I am convinced Max told him, give me another one. Because the crowd was into this. The crowd wanted to get so much harder into this, you could feel it. So instead of just doing the one V trigger, Kenny threw him against the ropes and gave him a second one to the delight of the fans. There were so many really excellent sequences. There was a really fast-paced one that, again, I thought we were going to move into the second gear, or another gear at the very least. So there were moments where I connected, or I was looking to connect, but it didn't deliver the emotional gravitas that other matches on this card did. This is like the most depressing 3 3/4 star match review I have given in a long time, but it just didn't reach. It didn't reach over. It didn't raise itself. There were elements here that just played against them. That just played against the whole setup. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. I know a lot of people got upset at the finish, right? The ref bump, the visual pin, the Dynamite Diamond Ring. It's a cheap finish by design, and it's MJF, it's to be expected. And I can't blame the people who are upset with that. There's a lot of circumstances, especially when it comes to Max, where it's like, where you have to expect shenanigans and a cheap finish and so on and so forth, which is fine. But when your match is like 40 minutes and you're going to reach a finish that disconnects with everything that was going on, for the previous, 38 minutes or whatever, that kind of sucks, because then I don't feel that was very respectful of the time of the viewer, because the finish had nothing to do with what was going on physically in the match, the physical story they were telling. You'll tell me, oh, Warren, but it does, because Max had to use the Dynamite Diamond Ring because he knew he couldn't beat Kenny Omega. Okay, if that's the story you want to tell, this doesn't have to go 40 minutes. At 40 minutes, quite frankly, I expect a payoff. Again, maybe it's me, but I don't think it's unreasonable to have sat through a 40-minute match and expect a clean finish. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. If it's 20 minutes, I can live with that. That's fine. But you asked me to give you double the investment and you still do the cheap finish. I'm like, Can you imagine if this was the kind of finish that would have ended, any number of Omega Okada matches where suddenly Kenny Omega goes full Bullet Club and starts low blowing everywhere and gets the low blow to get the, can you imagine? So no, that didn't go that way because reasons. And like I said, I understand that this is the story you want to tell with Max. Then you can also make the decision to not have your main event go 40 minutes then. That's a review that really comes across as super duper harsh for a 3 and 3. It almost sounds like I'm giving it a 2, with the way I'm talking about it. But no, it was very good. It was a very good match. I've got no qualms about that on that front. It's just, I don't think it's as great as everyone thought it was. Now on the flip side, Jon Moxley successfully retaining the AEW Continental title against Will Ospreay. Now we're getting the other side of the coin. Now what we have here is a match that delivered exactly what it needed to, what you thought it would. This match was fucking incredible. This match was so fucking good. And this I talked about it on the preview on stream. This was the match I was most looking forward to on the entire card. This was my ticket buyer, my system seller. This was it here. With Ospreay starting off the match at the bell, just cracking Mox across the face with a hidden blade. And the crowd is up on their feet. Mox is fencing on the mat, and the crowd is going bonkers. Ospreay standing there, and I'm sitting there going, is this going to be a 3-minute squash? Which would have been awesome. I think. I believe like this, if Will had completely squashed Mox, like pick him up, and give him the old Stormbreaker or whatever after that, and then Mox sits back up and lands him, Will just landing like the Stormbreaker, the Styles Clash, an Os Cutter, and then another hidden blade or whatever, he just pulls it all out of the arsenal. The Tiger Driver 96, which one is it? I don't remember, 92. He pulls them all out. He does them all. 3 minutes, the match is done. I think that would have been really awesome. But no, they didn't go that way. Instead, they gave us a fucking great wrestling match. And Mox early on, he's trying to fight. He's doing his best. He's realizing. Well, first, I'm jumping ahead here because Ospreay, outside of my own thoughts of this being like, is this going to be a squash? Is this going to? Ospreay standing there and he points. He goes, "I got time. We got 20 minutes here, bruv. Let's go. I can beat the piss out of this guy." I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, so this is going to be Will's attitude here for this match. And he's just going for it, right? And Mox is trying to wrap him up. Like early on, the only way he really has to fight, because Ospreay is just coming in vicious and quick. And the only thing Mox can do is like wrap him in a triangle. But Ospreay's like, fuck you with your triangle, and lifts him right up and power bombs him. Like Mox, to start off this match, is completely off his game. And it is tremendous. It takes he has to land a paradigm shift on the floor to get back in control. And he has some great control segments on Will. And you know, they're trading strikes and whatnot, but he landed 2 sleeper suplexes where Ospreay fucking lands on the top of his dome. He lands a Gotch-style pile driver. He does the pile driver on the stairs, which was fucking great. Just like an awesome-looking pile driver. Will selling it like he's just been shot with a shotgun to the chest. It is awesome. Just absolutely fantastic. After the second sleeper suplex that Will eats, Mox is running the ropes. Ospreay transitions into a power bomb. Then Mox does a little Death Rider, and Ospreay fires up as he's falling, fires off like a spinning elbow right to his noggin as he's going down. It's just so good. And then and Ospreay gets a little heated at the ref. The ref is trying to keep him apart, and he gets a little heated. You're like, oh. So look, we'll get to that in a second, but Ospreay's getting heated, and that was very likely what brought him down. Because then for the end of the match, that's when we get the pile driver on top of the steps, because the doctors come out immediately to check on Will. He beats the count, but he eats 2 paradigm shifts in the ring. Will kicks out, so then Mox hits the high angle Death Rider, whatever the fuck, right? I don't know how to call them anymore. And he gets the 1, 2, 3. Mox retains, and just an absolutely fucking great, beautiful thing of beauty. 2 guys brutalizing themselves and leaving everything out there. And we have to point out in this match, how great Will was. And a guy who legitimately just came back from massive neck surgery. Could you tell that this guy's neck is fused? You could fool me. And we saw another instance of Will Ospreay adapting himself to the new reality of his neck, right? Because yes, okay, he wrestled Pac and he did do some aerial moves. Yes, when we saw it a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh fuck, this guy, this fucking guy. But then he fights Mox and he's grounded. There's no flips. He's not doing the pip Cheerios. He's not jumping all over the place. He's not landing os cutters. This guy is grounded. He's got his 2 feet on the ground, and he is violent. He's as violent as Mox is. He's just laying right into him. Ospreay brought the violence in this match. He brought the fight, the brawl. It wasn't about the spectacular stuff. It was about him being physical and brutal with his opponent. And the storytelling thread here, which ultimately led to Ospreay's demise, was Mox capitalizing on Ospreay's impetuousness. The fact that Will came into this with a personal grudge. Mox told him in the lead up to this, don't make this personal, kid. It's all business. But Will made it 100% personal. He brought in his pals from New Japan to help him beat up Mox and the Death Riders. When Mox told him, you don't have to come after me, I won't come after you, and we'll settle this in the ring. He's being a heel, of course, but Mox nonetheless told him, don't make this personal. And Will made this personal. And he made it personal in the match when he knocks Mox out. Mox is fencing, and he points at his invisible watch and says, I got time to beat up this son of a bitch some more. And that was his mistake. And he got heated, and he got more and more heated as the match went on. Proof with the fact that he got hot at the ref. And that led to him making mistakes that Mox capitalized on. And Mox told them. Mox's promo on Wednesday should be, I told you so, Will. I told you not to make it personal. You wanted to make this about some vendetta. Me, it was all business, brother. I kept my head in the game. You couldn't. That's what the promo should be, because that's what the awesome story they told here. Will's emotions got ahead of the game plan, which was to beat Moxley, claim the title. That was such a tertiary, that's my main criticism out of all of this, is that Mox really didn't have to keep the title when fighting Konosuke Takeshita. He could have dropped. The title was so secondary here. No one talked about it because it wasn't important. But nevertheless, John fucking Moxley. John Moxley continues to be the ace of this company. And I won't hear anything different. You know, and people will want to argue, you know, Hangman or whoever the fuck, right? They'll want to, but for 7 years, this guy has been consistent. So incredibly consistent in his work and what he brings to this company and what he delivers in his matches, particularly in the last 365 days. I see people creating like my top 5 AEW wrestlers of the year. You've got Will Ospreay, you've got Andrade, you've got Bandito, you know, and their top 5. You've got, MJF, I see a few times. Kenny, Kevin Knight. And I'm like, where the fuck is John Moxley, you fuckers? John Moxley he's been on an all-time run for the past year. An all-time great run. He is, look, Chris Jericho may have trademarked the cornerstone, but this guy's the backbone. This guy has held up this company so many times in moments of extreme peril and danger. After events occurred, carrying this company on his shoulder, even while him was going through personal struggles. Even throughout all of that, he comes into work every week. If he's not wrestling, he's cutting awesome promos. He's always involved, and he's always a thrill to watch. Reliable, exciting, world class. That's what John Moxley is. Now I have taken my victory lap in regards to the people who wanted John Moxley out of the company a year ago. You remember those? You might even be one of those listening right now, who in January 2025, you were clamoring for him to return to the Fed, that he was washed, that he was no more good, that he stunk. I've taken my victory lap. I'm not going to take it again. I could. Nothing keeping me from taking it again, really, outside of, we got to keep this rolling here. But I myself, throughout that period where people thought the Death Rider stunk, and for a while they did. I'm not saying that he didn't. And that the whole thing with Adam Copeland was terrible. It was. I'm not saying it didn't. But one thing I always said, never bet against John Moxley. That is a consistent thing that I have said over and over again. And it just turns out that I was right. But I'm not some kind of sorcerer who can like perceive things in wrestling that people don't. I just pay attention. I just open my eyes and watch what's in front of me. I take into consideration what the body of work that Jon Moxley has done for this company. And I'm like, why would anyone doubt Jon Moxley? And now Moxley, since last fall, has been consistently involved in my favorite matches in AEW, on the pay-per-view, some of my favorite angles as well. He's been involved in them. He's been one half of them. And it continued in Dynasty with this one here. Practically every show, including this one. High-level physical brawls at every turn. Even while he was fighting through his personal struggles, like I said, the standard he sets show after show, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, that's the standard this company has to use as a baseline. If he were gone, this color that he brings, this uniqueness, this thing that is incredibly AEW that he could not do in 2026, WWE would be gone. And we would all be worse off. That's why, to me, he is still today the ace of this fucking company. But back to Will Ospreay. If this is what post-neck surgery Will Ospreay is going to look like, look, I got no issues from it. His trajectory here is remarkable. Ever since he started packing on the pounds a few years ago, becoming less dependent on the aerial stuff, because he could probably feel it. And he probably knew that, that type of wrestling was unsustainable physically, right? His work has improved so much. And this match feels like it's legitimately part of that evolution. This is not your 2015 flippy-doo Will Ospreay match that has the internet up in arms and saying this is a gymnastics routine. It's gone. That Will Ospreay's gone, and he's been gone for a few years now. But he is a fit. Like that other Will Ospreay is buried. He's in a coffin covered in cement, in the foundations of a skyscraper in Chicago somewhere. That Will Ospreay does not exist anymore. And anyone who still relegates back to that old version of Will, where he wasn't very good at selling, where he was, very acrobatics. Everything that he did was very acrobatics minded, and he wasn't as flowy with his match structures and so on and so forth. They were very much exhibitions, which was fine too. Coming up on the scene and whatnot, you try some stuff out. That's how you grow. You grow into this. Anyone who's still, my point is, anyone who's still, I'm all fired up. Anyone, that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is here. I'm going to start interrupting myself. The point that I'm making is that Will Ospreay here that exists today is no longer that old Will Ospreay. And anyone that still says, oh, he's just a flippy-doo guy and so on and so on. Anyone who does that, I don't care who says it. It is a block. It is an unfollow. It is a podcaster you no longer listen to. It is a writer you no longer read, because that is proof positive that they do not watch modern Will Ospreay, that they're still stuck with their dislike of Will Ospreay from 10 years ago and were unable to evolve. Unlike Will Ospreay, who will be remembered as legitimately one of the greatest to ever do this. He will be in the conversation of being one of the greatest wrestlers to ever do this. Not on a funny, he's, how everyone says, this guy's the GOAT, and we throw it around. No. Or when people sit down to talk about this seriously, put some thought into it, a little bit of research, Will Ospreay is going to be in those conversations. He's going to be in those conversations with Misawa and Ric Flair. Unquestionably. There is no doubt in my mind. And this match, holy shit, this match was so good. Because of that through line, because of that story, because of the emotion that was being brought through, because of the chemistry that exists between Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay. It's just palpable. The guys play off each other like it's nothing. Like they've been doing like they've been sparring with each other for a decade, like nonstop every day. Like they know each other so well. These are two guys who have visions of professional wrestling that, even though they express it in different ways in the ring, they have a vision of pro wrestling that converges, that meets, and they're like, yes, this is how we're gonna do it. And this is why I wanted to talk about these matches back to back. And you felt it very naturally. The reason why, I'm sure, in just the two different ways I talked about those matches. The two most anticipated matches on that card, 4 of the company's biggest stars, 2 of the best built programs, the highest expectations, both delivered physically, both had the ingredients, but there was one that took the ingredients and cooked. The Mox Ospreay match did everything right. It had the genuine feeling. It had the multiple explosive moments. It had the expertly manipulated crowd investment, right? The dramatic stakes, and it all accomplished it in roughly 20 minutes. The main event had double the time, and it couldn't get there. It couldn't even scratch what Ospreay and Mox did. And that's the juxtaposition that's worth sitting with here. The same level of anticipation, the same caliber of talent, completely different execution, completely different result. One of these matches made every moment count. The other one sort of kept you hanging on to hope that something was going to explode, that the electricity was suddenly going to happen. And this is an interesting conversation to have, because there is a gap here between those two, and that should be the conversation. And I just want to bring that up. I think if you look at my 2 reviews here, I think you get the gist of how I feel and how these matches came about. It's just very interesting to put them back to back here. That's why I wanted to do it, because I think the comparison is viable. I think it's reasonable to do. Nonetheless, Mox Ospreay, I'm going to give that 4.5 stars. Now, I don't know what the plans are for the Owen tournament this year. Normally, we should be getting into the Owen in this. I mean, especially if we follow last year's pattern, the Owen finals culminate at Double or Nothing. That's kind of the path that we should be on very soon. We should be heading to Double or Nothing. Folks, I would not be surprised in the slightest if we get Mox Ospreay 2 as a part of the Owen, and maybe even the finals. Who knows? But I kind of feel like it's the best way. I kind of feel like it's the best way to have Will beat Mox, so get that feud out of the way with him being on top, but without winning the Continental title, so that he's beltless and free to go into Wembley as the #1 contender for the Men's World Championship. Doesn't that make sense? But it all depends it depends when we're starting the Owen Hart tournament, right? Of course. Anyway, there's a lot more to talk about on this show. Why don't we go all the way to the top of the pre-show and work our way up in chronological order? How about that? Alex Windsor defeated Marina Shafir to open up the pre-show. Good little match. I enjoyed it. Windsor came across as a complete performer here. I think she kept this one together. I think Marina was, Marina's improved. Don't get me wrong. There are still moments where where you see things and you're like, ugh, you know, I think there were moments that it was a little off, but you could tell Alex Windsor was really keeping this together. You know, the one spot that irked me the most from Shafir here was the one spot I think like she kicks Windsor, or she comes in to kick Windsor, who's in the corner, and Windsor dodges. So Shafir hits the corner and she sells it like death. She's like, like she wails and she rolls to the floor, clasping her leg. And it's like, you know, it's like, oh, okay. So we might have a leg situation here to work with. But then she gets back into the ring and she never touches it again. Now I don't mind if, now I'm not going to sit here and, you know, and start analyzing everyone's selling. I don't do that. Sometimes I think it's asinine, but there's some times where it just jumps out at me. It's like, holy shit. Okay. Yeah, that was kind of egregious. And this one was, holy shit. Yeah, that was kind of egregious. So, you know, a nice little 3-star match to open this stuff. It was good. Good opener. Then we had Camille, who, you know, before the show, earlier today, attacked Willow Nightingale on camera, you know, just coming out of nowhere and like, holy shit, that's Camille. Wow. I guess, was not expecting that. So she beats up Willow Nightingale, you know, backstage. And then it's, you know, then she gets a match on the pre-show, which is essentially a squash against Big Ann, which got a big rise out of me. I thought, what a great name, quite frankly, Big Ann. And of course, a lot of people got really excited because here we are in AEW and another giant woman appears in the ring. I thought it was really funny that Camille's lower third, right, her Chiron when she was coming in, made reference to her absence and flat out said that Camille returns after a 529-day hiatus. You can be putting that for, like, why are you putting that? That's not impressive. That's not a cool stat. That's like, that's not good. That's kind of rotten to do. I wondered if it was a rib or if it was, you know, just like a humiliation thing I don't know. But what a thing to put in the Chiron where it's like, you're basically telling the audience, hey, this person hasn't been here for, you know, a year and a half and we know it. She squashes Big Ann. And so, you know, I don't rate the squashes. After the match, Willow Nightingale hit the ring for payback. She's got her shoulder taped up from the attack earlier in the day. She's still in her casual gear. She's fired up, but Camille beat her up again, left her laying some more. And they are going to have a match on Dynamite this week. All right. Jack Perry defeated Mark Davis to retain the AEW National Championship. Just incredible. Great. A lot of fun. What a fun match this was. Before we do anything, before we move it forward again, Mark Davis back with the Dangerous on his trunks. Now, if you don't watch the Dynamite reviews, you don't know how I've been keeping an eye on this. How a few weeks ago, Davis came to his match and it was written on his trunks, Dangerous Mark Davis. Now, everyone keeps calling him Dunkzilla, but I told him, I was like, Mark, I see what you're trying to do. Dangerous Mark Davis, and I like the ring about it. It has a nice little alliteration. It's got a good rhythm to it. I like it. And I know what you're doing, brother, and I'm gonna work to get that over. So he does that one week, hits the ring the next week, and there's nothing on his trunks. It's just plain old basic black trunks. And I'm like, is he getting rid of it? And the audio and commentary is still calling him Dunkzilla. Like, no. Maybe did we not want to go with the Dangerous? Did this come in from creative? Did Tony Khan say, Mark, we're not calling you Dangerous Mark Davis? And I'm like, but then he shows up at the pay-per-view on the pre-show, and what does he have on his ass? Dangerous. Fuck yeah. Mark, I still got your back, brother. To me, you are dangerous, Mark Davis. None of this Dunkzilla shit. You know, it's not 2021 anymore, brother. It ain't. You ain't carrying that flimsy geek Kyle Fletcher anymore. I got your back. Anyway, the match was mostly what you expect. Davis throwing the smaller Perry around with authority, but look, the release Falcon Arrow thing that Davis hit on the apron was outstanding. Just an incredible spot. And Perry was great. Hits a Norihara moonsault, sliced bread number 2. He survives the hoisted pile driver by Davis by reversing it into a DDT, which was awesome. He even lands a pile driver of his own, and Davis kicks out like a 2.9. Then Perry countered a charging lariat attempt with the Hurricane Rana, roll up, get the 1, 2, 3. Scrappy, resourceful match by Perry. But this is I find it's a good spot for him where scrappy, I think, is the good word. I think if he leaned into that more, that'd be very good. But Perry is great. His matches are very, very good. And Davis is tremendous as well. This was a lot of fun. A 3.5-star match there on the pre-show. That's the kind of thing that makes me happy. And then the Toronto Dominion, Lita Cross and Megan Bayne. Again, if you don't watch the Mr. Warren Hayes show streams and whatnot, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But the Toronto Dominion defeated Hyan and Maya World, who I've been clamoring to get back on TV again. Look, just hand me the pencil directly at this point, boys. If we're bringing dangerous Mark Davis back, we're booking Hyan and Maya World again on AEW. Get them out of the Ring of Honor. Just at this point, just give me the pencil. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. Divine Dominion win with a double power bomb for the retain. Good little title match. Because this was for the women's tag team titles, right? But this was good. Good little match. Got the crowd into it at the right spots. Bane's strengths spots continue to be a reliable spectacle throughout it all. I still think she is most improved in 2025. I don't think enough people gave her credit for how much her game rose in 2025. She is so much more of a complete, confident TV performer. Her match with Olympia in Arena Mexico a few weeks ago was absolutely phenomenal. It was the match of the night. Clean title defense. Challengers got to look capable. But, in this environment right now, where the tag team division seems a little dry, and keep them around. Keep Hyan and Maya World around. I don't know, man. Let's do more. Let's just do more. 3.25 star for this lovely little event here. Next, we move on to the main card, which started off with the Young Bucks defeating Kazuchika Okada and Konosuke Takeshita in, guess what? An excellent tag team match, because it's the fucking Young Bucks and they are extraordinary. Just an incredible match that continues to demonstrate just how fantastic they are, how they still are the best at what they do. And throughout the match, of course, they told the story that Takeshita and Okada, they don't get along. This is still the thing with Don Callis on commentary, making sure we understand that I've been enjoying the analogy that he's pulled out as to sort of deal with the friction between these two top guys, right? Where he's like, for me, I'm trying to run the Don Callis family like a sports franchise. So I don't mind if there's some professional rivalries between guys on the team. And what I like about that is that it breaks just about every pro wrestling trope, where normally you'd be like, oh, this guy's turning, oh, this guy's or the heel manager would be like, nothing's wrong here. And Don was doing that for a while, right? It's like, no, everyone's fine. Don't worry about it type of thing. But now he's addressing it. But he's addressing it in a way where it's like, yeah, there's nuance here. Maybe these guys, I mean, they brought up Jordan and Pippen, right? Maybe these guys don't understand, don't like each other, can't get along, but they will work together because they understand that there is money to be made here. And that's Don's vision of this. And I appreciate that because that's novel. That's not something, again, that the other guys would ever do. They will, seed things in until, for weeks and weeks and weeks until a guy turns, like that. Now we're like, well, in the real world where there are shades of gray, it is entirely plausible that Okada and Takeshita don't get along, but will fight on the same side because it is financially beneficial for both of them to do so. Of course, this came apart in this match when eventually, well, first of all, they fight each other to begin with, and then later on in the match for the finish, the Bucks have Okada up into the position for the TK driver, and Takeshita grabs Nick Jackson's foot to keep him from doing the dive, the flip, I should say, the springboard. Jesus Christ! And then he slowly lets go, calling back to that match that they had on Dynamite where Okada let Takeshita eat the TK driver. Is like, okay, that's fine. People are saying, oh, is this the real turn? Is this a real turn? No, this is payback. I don't think this is the real turn yet. The real turn is going to happen, and I think, when Okada officially beats the living hell out of him. Blindsides him and just dismantles him. And probably with the rest of the Don Callis family. It'll be imminent. It's coming. And they probably had something all set up with Kyle Fletcher too, which is going to be a shame because that was a great tie-in. That's not going to happen. But nonetheless, the story they were telling here was really good. But the match itself, it was fantastic. We got, you had the Matt Jackson's Code Red German that he did, got a bunch of guys all waist locked together into a German suplex, and then a Blue Thunderbomb by Takeshita and a Destroyer by Matt on Soup, who then bounced up and just kneed Matt across the face, and the crowd was on their feet. Okada and Takeshita, like I said, slugged it out at some point, but then worked in tandem to take out Mac Jackson with a stereo drop kick by Okada and a running knee by Soup. But then Soup accidentally strikes Okada with a knee. Nick lands a poison rana. Takeshita avoids a BTE trigger with lariats. Then Okada keeps Takeshita from landing the burning fire. Then he accidentally rainmakers Takeshita, which leads to a BTE trigger on Okada, and then the TK driver moment that we talked about. This was so good. Look, the Bucks are so fucking great at this. The Bucks are so excellent at this. The double team magic that they have time and time again, and you've seen these moves so many times before. You've seen these routines, but there's always something a little extra. There's a little something creative every time these guys go at it. It is it's phenomenal. It's a shame. It's a shame that people are so close-minded and entrenched in their principles that they will continue to not enjoy the work of one of the greatest tag teams of all time, if not the greatest tag team of all time, happening right before your eyes. And they're going to be, for whatever reasons, just going to go poo-poo and killing the business and all this stuff, right? Because of course. 4.5 stars for this match. I fucking loved it. Tremendous stuff. Ricochet defeated Chris Jericho. Excuse me. Jericho. I think. Is that the gimmick? Is that the Chris is gone? There is only Jericho now, There is only Zool. Yeah, I mean, look, Jericho came out and he looked terrific. We talked about it on the review last week, and even the week before. God, has it already been 2 weeks since his return? he looked tremendous and was tremendously over in Vancouver. You know, great reaction from the crowd. And this match was awesome. This match was extremely good. Athletic, well-structured. It didn't ask him to do things he can do at this stage of his career, but he did enough for you to go, holy shit, you know, with the crowd even going, you still got it. And then him looking into the camera saying, I never lost it. Look, Ricochet was the ideal dance partner, quite frankly, for this match, for a guy who is a legend in AEW, that you are bringing back under very, you know, well, what could potentially be prickly circumstances, because Jericho's a divisive figure. It was the smart booking call to get him in there with Ricochet, who was able to just make him look as good as possible and work with whatever little issues or shortcomings that may occur in the match. Ricochet was the perfect opponent here. And the match, and it showed in the match. It showed in the match. You've got Jericho, you know, anti-airing a shooting star press with the code breaker. That was fantastic. You know, and he does earlier in the match, he does a lion salt to a huge reaction from the crowd. And he's doing, he did the walls of Jericho, the whole 9 yards. But Ricochet fights back and lands the spirit gun. And just to add insult to injury, lands a moon's lion salt and gets the win. He gets the win. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Here is Chris Jericho once again putting over other guys on the roster. Just like the consistent thread of Jericho's presence in AEW continues. Despite what people, I hope we all realize at this point, that people saying Chris Jericho never puts anyone over, the Jericho Vortex and all that. I hope we've all dispelled that myth and it doesn't exist. Jericho has spent the majority of his time in AEW putting other people over, to the point where, as I've talked about multiple times, to the point that beating Chris Jericho really didn't feel special anymore. Now, listen, coming in, fresh coat of paint, we're starting over, fresh face, baby face, so on and so forth. The big question that I have is this going to be a regular thing again? You know, I would assume, especially with Ricochet stealing the lion salt, I would assume that this feud must continue. But like, what is the plans for Chris Jericho in the future are still not very clear to me. I haven't got a read on it yet. And, you know, the rest of the demand, the Gates of Agony, they all got involved, and it was fine. It was Ricochet doing heel things here. And look, Jericho looked great. He had probably, when's the last time Chris Jericho had that good of a match? When is the last time Chris Jericho hit a 4-star match in AEW? Years at this point. This was extremely good. This was an excellent return, flawless, wonderfully executed, worked to the strengths, felt like a struggle. I have nothing bad to say about this match, really. Nothing bad to say about it. I'm just questioning, what are we doing with Jericho moving forward here? 4 stars. Let's give this one 4 stars flat. Darby Allin defeated Andrade El Idolo and just a bonkers match. God, this was so much fun. And yes, it is the same template for every fucking Darby Allin match. Just how much punishment can Darby Allin take? Like, for instance, doing a drop kick in the stadium stairs, which was just there is no way to take the bump from doing the drop kick. Well, you can't. You flat back it, you get hurt. You fall on your side, you get hurt. Like, there's no way. What the fuck is he doing? Darby Allin is crazy. And look, it's Darby Allin. What do you want from me? I love the shot where Andrade is taking his selfie with the plant, and and taking his time. He's doing the with the sunglasses and whatnot, and Darby does a coffin drop, but the camera doesn't catch him. The camera is just like fixated on the ground, looking at Andrade, and you've got Darby just landing into view, but it didn't even look like Darby. It's like just something fell into view, and the camera's like shaking unnaturally, and like it was a super chaotic moment. It was such a good shot. Andrade going up to the top rope with Darby in a fireman's carry, right? I would assume he wanted to do like an avalanche sack of shit or something, but Darby reversed it into a flying crossface, which was awesome. And the craziest ass thing, a full-on suplex, stalling suplex, mind you, from the apron to the floor by Andrade. What the actual hell? That was just crazy. And Andrade just kept beating him up. Darby ate the spinning back elbow, and but immediately, like out of nowhere, gets the pin off of Andrade with the Last Supper. Andrade after the match offers a handshake, and Darby takes it, which leads me to believe once again that this thing with the Don Callis family and MJF is wearing pretty heavy on Andrade. We'll see how that translates into this environment where at the same time you've got Takeshita, who's on the outs a little bit, or at least it feels that way. Look, anyway, excellent performance by both these guys. Just absolutely tremendous. Darby is a prop for violence. That's what he is. He's a prop. He's like, he tells his guys, just throw me around. And Andrade was tremendous at it, methodical, theatrical, just awesome in what he does. Look, I got to start, I have to start eating a little bit of crow here, as I was not a fan of Andrade returning. I was very, very, very nervous about him. I still am, but I cannot deny the output that he has been delivering, not only in AEW, everywhere he's wrestled so far. His output has been outstanding since leaving WWE. He is turning out to be a much better addition to the roster than I thought. Now, I want just to remind everyone, just so that you know what my mental struggle is when it comes to Andrade. My mental struggle is this: despite the fact that I feel like he feels like a team player and a guy who, he wants to make AEW his home and whatnot. This is a guy who has never left a promotion on good terms, except for AEW, apparently. Never left a promotion on good terms, and always ends up being discontent. This is his MO. This is how it goes. So right now, like I said, since the start of the year in AEW, he's been pushed at the top of the card. He's been made a contender for the world title. He's been beating some of the top guys in the company, like Kenny Omega and Swerve Strickland. His whole gimmick is, I flirt with beautiful women ringside. Like his entire thing, like that's what he's doing right now. I would also be very happy with where I am. Now, the minute that things start to slip and whatnot, and he's not necessarily like on the island as much as Johnny Nitro would like to tell us, that's when we're going to see the real test for Andrade. Yeah, there's no reason for him to be unhappy right now. He should be super duper happy. But again, I'm also for personal growth. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he's just realized, look, I am never going back to WWE with the way things ended. This is my only spot for making some good money in pro wrestling. I got to make this work now. I got to swallow my pride. I got to be a team player, so on and so forth. I got nowhere to go. I'm not going back to AAA. CMLL, not sure they want me back. We don't know. So, it's like, all right, New Japan like me. So that's my mental struggle. And that's still where I am. But I cannot deny that he has been a net positive so far for AEW. Like unquestionably a net positive as far as his performance so far. As far as Darby goes, well, this is all setting up a a title shot, as it were, this Wednesday on Dynamite against MJF. And there's a lot of speculation, a lot of talk going around it. Look, if you want my quick thought on this, because I want to continue with the review, I think Darby can win. I think Darby should win. I think it'd be very, very interesting. I think it would spice up the title picture right now. And it doesn't have to be a long reign. It can be a very extremely fucking short reign. It can be a reign that is ended. That it could be a reign that ends in 2 weeks on the next Dynamite. MJF rematches, and that's what we do. It could be the main event at Double or Nothing, so he has just a short little run for a couple of weeks. We could do that, and it would be exciting. And it, again, would be something the other company doesn't do. And then you give Darby his world title run, which I think a lot of people would like. You'd have world champion Darby Allin. That's fine, just for a short amount of time. I think that's great. I think it's great. And, I had a little discussion online with someone in regards to, with someone who's fed up with Darby's matches, with their structure and how they're laid out. And and I understand, but they're not boring. Like they're never like, I can understand where this person is coming from, but how can you not find that these matches are fun? That's something I personally don't understand. But ultimately, what the person said, there's one thing this person said was that they, if they hope that if Darby becomes world champion, they do it in a way where where they shake up the match structure and he wins it in a way that is unexpected, that is not a typical Darby Allin match, not typical Darby Allin fashion, which is always like a quick sneak win after eating a whole bunch of punishment. But to me, my response to that is why change what brought you to the dance in the first place? That's something I don't quite understand. It's something that was a point of discussion back in the day when Kofi Kingston became champion in WWE, where people were then expecting him, or even Big E, where people were suddenly expecting, well, now you got to be serious, now you got to act a certain way, now you're going to be like, but that's not what brought you to the dance in the first place. That's not what got you over. That's not what made you popular. That's not what got you. That's not what defined you as a wrestler up until this point where you got this huge opportunity. Why suddenly would you flip that around to something completely, well, maybe not completely, but alien, different, uncharacteristic is the word I was looking for, of what you typically do, right? I wouldn't have a problem if Darby Allin locks in the Last Supper on Max for a quick flash win after sneaking out of a heat seeker attempt. I would applaud that. That's tremendous. That's because that's Darby's MO. That's Darby's MO. He will take a beating, he will take a licking, keep on ticking, and then he can beat you in a flash without you even realizing it. That's his danger. That's the danger of wrestling Darby Allin. The danger of wrestling a guy like John Moxley is that you're gonna get the piss beat out of you. The danger of fighting a guy like MJF is he's gonna cheat to win. That's Darby's thing. That's his hook. Because look, he's 120 pounds. He's like a gangly guy. It's not going to be his strength. It's not going to be that he's a physical specimen. It's not going to be the strength of his strikes. It's going to be his inherent resistance to everything, and how he sets himself up to sneak a victory away from the other guy. That's it. I don't know why we'd change that. I legitimately don't know why we'd change that. Anyway, this match here, tremendous, 4.5 stars. I thought it was so much fun. Just incredible, awesome, a good time. FTR retained the AEW Tag Team title by successfully defeating Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. Look, I was going into this match with the expectation that this was going to be a self-indulgent Adam Copeland match. What we got instead was something that completely surprised me on, just on a really high level. I was delighted with the surprise that this match brought for me, and probably delivered one of my favorite Adam Copeland performances in AEW. And, I've been chatting around and, listening to some conversations with some people around me. Probably, top 3 Cope and Cage matches ever, if not the best match they've ever had. If you want to throw in the TLC match on top of that, but let's say a 2-on-2 tag match. This was great. And I mean, like, it's a little thing, but the belt shot and the way Cope set up the blade job, was brilliant stuff. That was incredible timing and an incredible visual. I thought at first he had that he had been busted open hard way, but with the amount of blood that was gushing, I was like, oh no, this was a gig. Perfectly timed, looked great, and what a fucking visual for the rest of the match. Having big bug-eyed Adam Copeland, with his surprisingly thin hair, just drenched in blood and sweat. Look, it added so much to the match. I was not expecting this from an Adam Copeland match in 2026, fellas. Let me tell you, it was awesome. And they're doing some solid moves. It's a good, solid professional wrestling match. But then, like, from the moment that Cope started to bleed, then Christian Cage gets taken out, where Cash just gets rid of Christian Cage, throws him over to the timekeeper area. He's gone for the rest of the match, right? The FTR are there just with Adam Copeland, who tries to fight back, but he's not getting this magical, WWE, the valiant babyface will fight off 2 guys to the very end type of scenario. He's not getting that kind of big comeback. No, he's getting his ass beat. He tries, but he gets a super kick party by FTR. He hits a double spear on the dudes after avoiding a FTR trigger, but he eats a shatter machine, and that's it. And a surprise win. I think this also made it better because I think everyone had slotted the title change going in. So I think it genuinely landed as a shock. I think everyone in Canada was expecting the hometown boys to pick it up. This was much, much better than expected. See, contrary to what I was talking about earlier. There was a real struggle here. Some really good action, smartly put together. The drama was not melodramatic. It just felt authentic in the match, and it was well worked throughout. The finishing structure was smart, right? Like I said, took out Christian early enough so that Cope would have to fight those 2 guys alone. So you're sitting there going, oh, well, one of 2 things is going to happen. Cope is going to fight off both guys and get the win, or Christian is going to come back for the big heroic save, neither of which happened. The heels won in what is a logical storytelling path to victory. I loved it. Cage never met the comeback. The trope where the partner miraculously recovers to even the odds doesn't happen. FTR just fucking finished the job. And Copeland ate the pinfall, which is not lost on me. They did a thing in the match as well at some point where I think it was Christian that rolled Stokely into the ring to break up a pin, and Dax was pissed off at Stokely. What the fuck are you doing? But that was a moment where I was like, oh, no. Let's not do this, not this. But it was just a thing, and it was fine. Like, it didn't set us down a path of no return, thankfully. And next we had the gauntlet match for the vacant TNT title, which was won by Kevin Knight. He defeated Tommaso Ciampa, Roosh, Bandito, Speedball Mike Bailey, El Clone, Daniel Garcia, and Anthony Bowens. These things are always extremely difficult to rate. Battle royals and whatnot, and I find these things to be very, very difficult to rate, and I don't necessarily think they're all that compelling either. I guess like I think my main highlight was the idea of Pac and Roosh. Although Pac and Tommaso Ciampa was also really good, and I'm like, okay, that created an itch. Now I need to scratch it. Now I want 15 minutes of Ciampa and Roosh. That could be a hell of a lot of fun. But yeah, and there were some really good moments in the match. I really liked Bandito going for a Tope con Hilo, but you've got El Clone who's on the apron, and Bandito does the Tope, flips over, and El Clone just grabs him to do a neck breaker as they all fall onto the people on the floor. That I thought was tremendous. And there's things that irritated me, like Bandito doing a 21 plex to break up a pin, but he came in so way too late that the referee actually stopped counting the three count, I should say. And like one of the things that annoys me the most from these gauntlet matches is that it's always one guy versus one guy. I think there's one moment in this match where you had three people at the same time, but structurally it's always like two guys in, and then everyone's around the ring being dead until it's their cue to go in. These gauntlet matches feel inorganic from that perspective. A lot of times the guys, when they get thrown to the floor, it doesn't feel like an organic throw, like where it's like, this justifies me spending the next 120 seconds on the floor not doing anything. I don't know. The gauntlet match has grown away from me. As much as I enjoyed it, I think I'm no longer a fan, but I understand at the same time that this was pulled together very quickly to respond to an unfortunate situation, which is Kyle Fletcher's injury. So we had to deal with the title. So I can, I'll forgive not having any big surprises and stuff like that. Now, all that being said, Kevin Knight winning was something that caught me by surprise, but delightfully so. I think I haven't seen anyone say Kevin Knight, or what a weird choice. I think Kevin Knight winning the TNT title was unanimously accepted by online wrestling fans. I think everyone was like, yeah, absolutely. Kevin Knight, good call. He rules, because he does. What a fucking trajectory this guy has had in the past year. He's basically been with the company for the past year, for a year, and does the tag team with Speedball, and both of these guys managed to get themselves over within the tag team, and they're doing singles things, and you can see it. Like, if you had never seen Kevin Knight in New Japan previously, or wherever else, specifically New Japan, you were introduced to a guy who is just oozing with raw talent and an extremely high ceiling, just a bunch of potential. And Tony Khan clearly sees it. Tony Khan clearly likes him and wants to give him all the opportunities to grow and be top notch as well. And that's fantastic. I mean, what more do you want really out of all of this? It is such a good choice. I think the only thing that would have made it sweeter is if he was the guy to beat Kyle Fletcher. But let's take this. And he's already got a match. He's already going to be defending on Dynamite this week. So we're wasting no time here. We're in the midst of a Kevin Knight push here, and I'm all for it. What does this mean for Speedball? I don't know. Who cares? We'll see. I don't care. I'm into the impeccable decision of crowning Kevin Knight here. Great guy on top of that. Exciting prospect. Just an excellent call. Like, this is just like a spot on, undeniably great call that I don't know. And a young guy. Did I mention he's a young guy on top of that? I don't think You'd have to be really fucking sour to sit here and go, well, I don't know. I want to give this to. I don't know. Just it's a tremendous pick here. Oh, and by the way, Bandito coming out for the gauntlet with his Ring of Honor World Championship title around his waist, taking it off and dropping it at the top of the ramp so he can run down to the ring to fight for an AEW mid-card title. Here, that's some point to the head. Point to the temple right there, folks. Tekla defeated Jamie Hayter to retain the AEW Women's World Championship in another fucking great physical, brutal match that just was like fantastic. Clever, character consistent, cheating finish on top of that for Tekla that didn't diminish the match, that did exactly the opposite of what happened in the main event, like I was talking about. These ladies just came to beat the piss out of each other. It was absolutely phenomenal. You know, the Liger bomb was excellent. The jumping tombstone counter was brutal. And Hayter was just, she was, not only was she dishing it out, but she was bumping all over the place too. It was just incredible stuff, right? But this was exactly the vibe of the entire pay-per-view. And it continued with the women's match here, just beating the shit out of your opponent. It was so good. It was so refreshing. Tekla is so good at this. Tekla is so good. We were talking about it earlier today on Blue Sky. You should follow me, at MrWarrenHayes.show. We were talking about it earlier today, how mind-boggling it is that she was the bridesmaid to Julia's star back in Stardom. And look at where they are now. Like, Tekla is having a breakout year. Legitimately, a breakout year. And Julia is just one of the girls on the roster. She's just another face. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I know the reasons why, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, if the company you work for tells you, hey, you know what? You can't shoot on people here. You got to stop working so stiff here. Well, that takes all of that just takes all of Julia's allure away. Anyway, look, that's all there is to it. I love the finish where Tekla is doing a bridging pin and she grabs the ropes for leverage. And then Alex Windsor, who was of course Jamie Hayter's partner, she runs to the ring after to argue with the ref. And I think this was great because this is like, yeah, it's like, like football fans arguing with the ref, like European football, soccer, right? That want to argue with refs when they see a bad call. And, Windsor's like, what are you doing? She was holding the ropes. Like this is actually really good. The thing that wasn't so good had nothing to do with the match. The pub segment, they have a pub. The Brawling Birds have a pub. They were sitting around, Alex Windsor with an ice pack on her head, and she's in a pub, or at least just like a set, just like the windows, like a window set, and there's a table and there's beer and Jamie Hayter's drinking the beer, and I'm like, why do they have this? What are we watching? What is going on? That was my reaction. It's like, what is going on? What am I watching here? See, I don't want this type of goofy sports entertainment stuff, because then I start asking questions, okay? Then the questions start arriving. Does that mean that this is something that they built for themselves, that they carry around from city to city, and this is where they hang out backstage? They travel with this, with their own little English pub set, setting it up in the production area, and just stay there. They don't go to the locker room. They don't hang out with anyone, like the APA did with their stupid fucking gimmick. Is this the same kind of thing? It stops making sense the minute you start thinking about it more than 5 seconds. It's dopey. It's dopey because I know it's dopey because it's dopey. Just can't stop pulling on the thread. Where are the taps for the beer? Do they have their own taps? Or do they order from the concessions? So it's like 20 bucks a beer then? That doesn't make any sense. So they probably carry their own shit around. Where is it? Is it kept cold or is it warm? So you're getting the real British pub experience then. 4 stars for Tekla versus Jamie Hayter. A tremendous fight. Loved it. And then we had the conglomeration made up of Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and the returning Kyle O'Reilly defeating the Dogs for the AEW World Trios Championship, which the Dogs had just won off of Mystico and Jet Speed on Collision. Now, before we get into the match, I just want to applaud Tony Khan and whoever on creative has decided or has made it a thing that the trios titles now, they just move around and change hands week after week or every 2, whatever. Finally, this is what the fucking trios titles are for. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have an issue with it. I had an issue when these titles were the most protected titles in the company. That fucking annoyed me. But now we're starting to get the vibe. Now it's like, oh, let's just move around. The idea is to have an excuse to have cool multi-man matches for these titles. That's what they're for. That's cool. Now, let's get a CMLL trio in here. Let's get Volador and Mascara Dorada and no, wait a second. Let's get Volador and the Villano 3 kids. Let's do that. Let's get those 3 dudes in here and let's have ourselves party matches week after week. Hell, just let all the fucking luchadors fight for the trios titles. Just bring in CMLL guys every week. That's what these titles should be about. Nonetheless, Kyle O'Reilly came back, and they did the sitcom thing, and it was all poorly mic'd. You couldn't hear Roderick Strong, you couldn't hear Orange Cassidy. And they had the whole sitcom here, and then someone knocked at the phony door, and it was Kyle O'Reilly. We got a bit of reaction. People were excited. I think everyone was kind of expecting this to happen. Good for Kyle O'Reilly to be back, though. You know, even though the whole setup was not for me. And then the Dogs come out and they beat down the set, and Dave Finlay destroys the door with his shillelagh, and Clark Connors does his best JD Vance impression, and Gabe Kidd pisses on the couch, and this all annoys me because I'm like, who cares? I don't care. Like, why would I care that the Dogs are destroying the conglomeration's phony set? I don't care. I do not care. Just let's get on with it. This was a bit of a weird match, but I think the weirdness comes a lot around the idea or the situation where Gabe Kidd injured his shoulder. Dave Meltzer reported at first that he thought it was a dislocated shoulder. If so, not so bad. It's not too bad. But I think Tony Khan at the press conference said that Gabe Kidd would be gone indefinitely, which is a shame because outside of wrestlers getting injured sucks. Gabe Kidd is supposed to fight Yota Tsuji at Wrestling Dontaku, and I want to see that match because those guys are excellent with each other. So, maybe it's not that big a deal. Hopefully Gabe will be able to get back on track really soon. Hope that he heals up quickly. But yeah, it sort of threw the match for a loop. I'm going to give it the gentleman's 3 here. Didn't think it was terrible. I think they did the best with a bad situation. And the conglomeration wins, and Kyle tapped Clark Connors for the win. It's fine. That's all really you have to say. Other than that's the review. That's the review of AEW Dynasty 2026, a genuinely great show. Hot crowd throughout. String of matches that cleared the bar. Vancouver was such a great setting for all night. They were engaged. They were loud. They were into everything. The pre-show I thought was pretty good. The main card delivered consistently, and despite what I thought about the main event, I enjoyed it. I just thought it under delivered, but it doesn't stain the card as bad as it doesn't stain the card as to reduce my overall enjoyment or to keep me from saying no, this wasn't a good card. No, this was an excellent, very, very top tier pay-per-view. Do you want some suggestions? Do we want some recommendations? Of course, Mox versus Ospreay. That goes without saying. How about we go with the Bucks versus the Don Callis family, Takeshita and Okada? How about we go with Darby Allin versus Andrade? Look, there are so many 4-star matches, 4.25. Just watch the whole goddamn thing. Just enjoy yes, it's a long show, but it's also a breeze to watch. And if you like pro wrestling, you like wall-to-wall action, this is the show for you. Don't piecemeal this too much. Enjoy. Go ahead and watch an extremely enjoyable, high-octane series of wrestling matches. You will not be bored. You will not regret it. It's an excellent show. There you go. Those are my thoughts. All right. I guess we're going to talk about TNA. I guess it's time to talk about LOL TNA. There's no other way. There's, they just keep on doing it. They keep doing it to themselves. Why dunk on TNA when they're entirely capable of dunking on themselves? At this point, if you're on the internet at all, if you frequent any online hunts for pro wrestling, you have heard that TNA has decided to pull their talent from multiple matches over WrestleMania week next week. We're going to go in the chronological order of things, and then we'll have ourselves a good old-fashioned hoedown. Does that work for you, chat? Here we go. The first bit of reporting that we got here started popping up yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, right? This all happened yesterday. It feels like it happened like over 2 days because there were so many twists and turns. But it was even like late afternoon, early evening that this all started to simmer to the surface. When I say yesterday, I mean April the 8th, 2026. Multiple reports on Wednesday indicate that TNA's Moose has been pulled from Maple Leaf Pro's Multiverse event on Friday, April 18, and that changes could be made to other shows during WrestleMania week as well. Moose is said to have received approval from TNA Wrestling to appear before the company later reversed that decision. It is believed he would have worked with talent from another promotion, likely All Elite Wrestling. Mike Johnson of PW Insider wrote that the rumblings in recent days suggest TNA has had a change of heart about allowing its wrestlers to work with talent from other companies. Fightful Select published a similar report Wednesday, also stating that Moose had been pulled from the Maple Leaf Pro show after being previously approved. According to Fightful, quote, sources familiar with the situation, unquote, believe it is possible TNA could move toward not permitting its contracted wrestlers to face AEW talent at all. The report also noted that Nick Nemeth is pushing for his scheduled match against AEW World Champion MJF at Creative Pro Wrestling's May 1st event to still take place. Other matches included for WrestleMania week featuring TNA and AEW talent include Leon Slater versus Ricochet at the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show on April 16. Fightful added that people close to MLP I'm sorry. It's funny because how many? Well, anyway, no, I'm not doing source guessing. I'm not doing it. Nope. This is not. Nope. We're not doing that. Fightful added that people close to MLP indicated TNA president Carlos Silva was unhappy about AEW airing Collision opposite Impact last Thursday night due to NCAA basketball coverage. Moose previously said in an interview last September that he had been unable to work Maple Leaf Pro events due to the promotion's relationship with AEW. Moose said, "I talk to him, aka Scott D'Amore, at least once every other week, maybe once a month. He's doing great. He has his new Fed, Maple Leaf Pro. They're doing awesome. I wish I could work for them, but you know how business is with the whole TNA. They have a relationship with AEW. We're in competition with AEW, so you know all that whole nonsense, and you know how all that nonsense goes." Those comments were later pushed back on publicly by TNA president Carlos Silva, who wrote to our own Dave Meltzer, "Thanks, Dave. Moose knows, and all is good. Scott can call me anytime. He knows that too." So this is how everything kind of started. Everyone was like, "Oh, Moose has been pulled," and then you sort of start hearing these rumblings, and then you're like, "Well, I mean, you know, not everyone wants to work a wrestler who, throws his girlfriend down some stairs." I can understand maybe that some people would be a little, you'll be like, you know what? I'm not working with this guy. The juice ain't worth the squeeze here. Now, I understand all of this, and a lot of people. Here's the thing: basically, a lot of folks are going, they're not going to pull everything, especially not from the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Show, right? They're not gonna pull a match from a memorial show. Like, this is just a thing here. You know, there's probably something weird going on, but it's not going to be a generalized thing, right? That was the sentiment in a lot of situations, in a lot of people, with a lot of people that I was talking about, right? That I was talking to about this. But then we have some stuff popping up. Indie promoters start popping up on social media to bury TNA. TNA wrestlers, again, another article off of the Figure 4 Online and Wrestling Observer. TNA wrestlers may have a more difficult time getting booked with West Coast Pro moving forward. The promotion is running events on Thursday, April 16 in Las Vegas. Following West Coast Pro's West Coast versus the World, the promotion will also run an event alongside Marvelous Pro Wrestling at 10:30 p.m. Pacific. Both shows will take place at Bazaar Bar in Las Vegas. Promotion owner Scott Brigante posted to social media on Wednesday following news that TNA Wrestling is now blocking its talent from facing wrestlers contracted to other companies on independent shows. Brigante wrote, quote, "Working with talent on an independent level after clearing everything and doing business, only to have said talent pulled after the fact, high or low profile, gives me zero reason to work with anyone from said company making said arrangements. Abysmal dog shit." He later added, quote, "When you have an understanding and it gets cleared, all parties involved have weighed risks to get it cleared by multiple channels and by multiple companies, and then have said company go back on it is garbage, and a memorial show at that." It's not clear if West Coast Pro had to change its lineup for either of its shows next week as a result of TNA pulling talent. TNA Hall of Famer Gail Kim also commented on the situation. Kim said that if TNA is blocking talent from working certain shows, then the wrestlers should be compensated. She wrote on Twitter, "Hopefully they still get compensated. That's the right thing to do." So is that right, Warren? Is all the talent getting pulled? Or is it just like one promoter going nuts? No. Back on the Figure 4 Online Wrestling Observer, we have another article later on called "Update on TNA Pulling Talent from Shows." MJF versus Nick Nemeth status. Our own Dave Meltzer is confirming earlier reports on Wednesday that TNA is blocking talent from facing AEW wrestlers on independent shows. Regarding the MJF versus Nick Nemeth match scheduled for Create-A-Pro's show on May 1st, Meltzer says he was told the match is still expected to happen, but there has been an attempt to get it blocked. There have been no updates on the Ricochet vs. Leon Slater match scheduled for the Mark Hitchcock Super Show on April 16. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful is reporting that TNA president Carlos Silva has said some TNA talent have been pulled from shows due to quote-unquote partner conflicts. But then in an update to that update, it is written here. Dave Meltzer is reporting that Leon Slater versus Ricochet scheduled for the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show on April 16 is still on as of now. MJF versus Nick Nemeth at Create-A-Pro's show on May 1st now might not happen. Chaos, I tell you. Then it turns out that they did pull Ricochet versus Leon Slater. It probably one of the most exciting matches that everyone was looking forward to all WrestleMania week is getting pulled. But that's not all. It's not just an isolated thing. Friends, TNA reportedly blocked MJF opponent for a planned GCW match, says this article here on the Figure 4 Online Wrestling Observer. By our boy Josh Nason, by the way. A new report from Fightful Select Wednesday revealed yet another MJF match was pulled due to a decision by TNA management, this one coming last month. The outlet reported that the reigning AEW World Champion was set to face Bear Bronson as part of a GCW event in March, but TNA blocked it. Of course, amidst all of these matches being scrapped, Josh here pulls out a very, very good point, saying one of those considerations, however, did not affect Jody Threat, who both took on and defeated Mercedes Moné last week in Winnipeg for Moné's final championship. It's unclear why that was different. Do you think it's because she won? And then it turns out that the Nick Nemeth MJF match is also canceled. It is no longer going to be happening on May 1st. Nick Nemeth is going to wrestle. I think he's wrestling Bear Bronson on the show, and MJF has issued an open challenge for the create. So there'll still be Nick Nemeth, there'll still be MJF on the card at the Create-A-Pro show, but they're not going to be fighting each other, which was another highly anticipated match, and that the guys have been building for months at this point. So Nick Nemeth got on Busted Open Radio and talked about it. He said he's crushed that his match is no longer happening. So this is what he said here. Here's his quote. You know, I was really looking forward to this. I was really, really excited. But yes, as of yesterday, as I was flying in, I found out because of certain partnerships and brands, TNA President Carlos Silva had to make a difficult decision and protect a couple of brands down the line and things that are actually contractually obligated to happen. Can't just kind of do whatever we want. Even though I think some things were approved at a different time, when it became the situation that it is now with a couple of different things happening at once, I feel like I'm crushed because I was very much looking forward to doing this, but it's unable to happen at the moment. Yeah, see, MJF and Nemeth are still working the May 1 event in Melville, New York, but we'll have different opponents. Nemeth is facing fellow TNA star Bear Bronson, while MJF will hold an open challenge. Here's what Nemeth had to say. Still doing the Create-A-Pro show, and refunds will be available. MJF is going to do an open challenge, and and he's still going to be signing and doing all the things that Create-A-Pro for that big show. All of those things will happen, Nemeth said. I'm going to wrestle Bear Bronson for the first time ever. I hate that it had to come out this way. I hate that this wasn't all taken care of in the past. But that's something we can all work on. I got to start reading some fine print, and we have to protect people that we actually work with and have partnerships with. Usually I'm pretty great about that. So I'll stay on that for everything that we do. So, I mean, look, Nick Nemeth works for the company, right? Carlos Silva is like legitimately his boss. So he's not going to jump on Busted Open and shoot on Carlos Silva. That doesn't make sense. It would have been funny as hell, but it doesn't make sense. But you can tell that there's a little bit of annoyance, right? He's like, oh, we got to pretend some partnerships and some brand deals, right? We got to protect those before anything else. We'll circle back to this because if Nick Nemeth sort of held back, MJF didn't. MJF hopped on Busted Open Radio today and called the move that TNA pulled disgusting. Here is the full quote. Let's talk about TNA and the fact that they are pulling young talent off of shows when they're barely paying them any money whatsoever and telling them, hey, you can't wrestle here. There's a guy from another promotion that's wrestling on the show. Does that help your young talent grow? Does that help young talent become better inside the squared circle? Moreover, does that help young talent put food on their plate so they can eat? What Carlos Silva is doing is disgusting. And if anybody supports him or that company at this point, it is very hard for me to wrap my head around. And he also called Carlos Silva on social media, on Twitter, a dumb motherfucker in a social media post earlier on Thursday, excuse me. I mean, a glorious burial by Max here, which I wholeheartedly endorse. I wholeheartedly endorse throwing Carlos Silva under the bus here. I know that there's been a lot of the argument of, well, card subject to change. What's the big issue? I understand the idea of card subject to change. And normally when that kind of stuff happens, it's usually because of things that are out of your control, right? It is not in a situation where you work with someone to bring a talent in, you come up with all the agreements, you set everything down to make it happen. You as the promoter, you start printing out flyers and posters and doing promotion around it to get people to come to your show. And then the fact that it gets pulled 1 week before the show, like in the case of the Mart Hitchcock Memorial and the West Coast Pro stuff, the fact that all of this gets thrown under the bus the week before WrestleMania week starts for no apparent reason other than we're not sending our talent anymore, that's bullshit. That is not card subject to change. That's not your regular card subject to change stuff. That is unprofessional bullshit is what that is. And if we go back to think what Nick Nemeth said, what we read just a few moments ago, where he's talking about, protecting partners and brands and whatnot. And, Sean Ross Sapp straight out saying, it's like, well, yeah, TNA didn't like that Collision was aired at the same time on a Thursday. Like, all right, okay. We can all see what happened here. We all understand what happened here, really. Because it is not the first time that a Collision airs on a Thursday night head-to-head with TNA. It is not the first time. Doesn't happen all that often, but this was not the first occasion for this to happen. So what do you think happened here? What do you think is actually going on here? Do we really think that this was all just a question of, getting upset that Warner Bros. Moved the show off of the Saturday night because March Madness was on? Do you think that's really the reason why Carlos Silva got upset? I'm even willing to bet, look at this guy. I don't even think this guy can get upset. I think this guy got a call. I think he got a call and was told, hey, how come we've got some of our guys wrestling AEW guys? And Carlos is like, bah, 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 bah. Who approved this, Carlos? Carlos, you have got to cancel all these matches, pull all our talent. And Carlos bends over the table like the sweetheart that he is, because he is completely subservient to WWE. Don't forget that. We've had precedent with Carlos not being able to stick up for his own interests here. If you recall, on the very first AMC show, the biggest TNA show event to happen within a decade or so, back on cable television, on that show, he was not able to book one of his contracted talent. He was not able to book Leon Slater, who he contracts, because WWE called and said, we need Leon Slater for our show over here in the UK. And what did Carlos Silva do? Yes, absolutely, sir. Mr. Khan, Mr. Levesque. Yes, absolutely. Here he comes. I'll tell him to pack right away, sir. And he did this on a night where he could have showcased his young, most exciting talent that he has. A guy who is destined to be a force in the future of the business of professional wrestling. This guy that we see on our screen right here has that dude signed to his promotion, and he could not say no to WWE. He had, okay, you can send him off. Here you go. He's all yours. So what do you think all of this is? You think it's really Carlos? Carlos signed all of these agreements. He didn't give a fuck. He didn't care. He was like, sure, go run WrestleMania weekend. It's fine. The boys have been doing this. I've been doing this for years regardless, right? It doesn't matter. Go do Leon Slater and Ricochet, sure. And because maybe, just maybe, I'm gonna give Carlos Silva maybe too much credit, but I'm gonna give him a smidgen of credit here. I'm gonna tell our boy, I'm gonna give him the credit here. Maybe, just maybe, he's like, well, if Leon Slater gets a high-profile match against Ricochet, that's going to help his profile. It's going to elevate him, and it's going to elevate us. People will want to see more of Leon Slater, and they're going to tune in to TNA to do it. Maybe he had that thought. Maybe he was savvy enough to connect all of that. But this guy's not a pro wrestling booker. This guy's a suit. This guy's a craven, boot-licking suit. WWE called in, and they saw it. They saw it. They're like, hey, how come this match is happening? How come Leon Slater is wrestling an AEW guy? And there is no issue with it happening. It is just an issue that exists in the mind of WWE, of course. Of course. So Carlos Silva, I mean, the rumor going around is the AEW thing, Collision airing at the same time as TNA Impact. But like I said, guys, gals, non-binary pals, like I said, this is not the first time AEW airs at the same time as TNA. Why are we making such a big fucking deal out of it now? We're making a big deal out of it now because Carlos is using that as an excuse because his handlers called him and told him to fix the problem. And he needed an excuse, he needed an out, and there you go. And it's the same thing with the Nick Nemeth. And you know what's even more fucking hilarious? Is that in the case of Ricochet and in the case of Nick Nemeth, these are two guys that WWE fired. And they were like, we don't want anything to do with these people anymore. And still, they're going to stick their nose in there and they're still going to have some level of interest, despite the fact that they outright, released, right? Not fired. You knew what I was talking about. But these are people that they decided, no, we're not going to renew these people. We're not going to renew some contracts here. They're all moving on. And they can't let go. WWE just can't let go. The thing here is that these agreements have happened, and they've happened, folks, months ago. These types of matches didn't all sling together, didn't all come together within the past 2 weeks or so. They've come together months ago. For this level of match, this has been discussed. And look, Dave Meltzer even said everyone agreed to do this. Everyone had signed the papers. Even the fucking finishers had been laid out. Everything from A to Z, everyone was in complete agreement with what was going to happen during WrestleMania week. And yet, so what do you think happened here? There is no other conceivable reason than Carlos Silva bending the knee to his master. Just as simple as that. And then it got me wondering, if he's bending the knee, if he's doing what he's told like a good little soldier, what is he getting in return? What has he been getting in return? How great is this relationship right now? Like, he must be having Roman Reigns show up on TV. No, of course he's not. I'm being facetious. But is he doing this to continue having Ariana Grace and two stacks, 10 stack of dimes guy? Is that who he's tuning in? Is that what he's excited about? Getting these people back on his show? Because as far as I understand, he hasn't been having all that much great WWE talent show up on his show recently. He had a much bigger influx when everyone was talking about the partnership and they wanted it to come across as big, leading into the negotiations with AMC and the start of AMC. But now that AMC has started, where's the talent exchange? Where are the people going on? Where are the people going on NXT? As far as I understand, there hasn't been any TNA people going on to NXT. And could it be that the last people to be on TNA have been Sol Ruka and Zarya? Like, as a surprise, as you know, because Ariana Grace is always fucking there because of her dad, right? What are they getting out of this? I don't even understand what TNA is getting out of this. Like, I understand, like in the traditional professional wrestling partnership, there is generally one partner who is in a bigger, stronger position than the other. That's always how it's been. And the bigger partner usually dictates a lot of terms. But I mean, there's being in a position of power and just being absolutely dog shit to your partner. And I think WWE is exactly like that. What have they done for TNA? Send AJ Styles to come say rah, rah, rah at the start of the first AMC and then go home? How is that exciting? And I'm not saying this because I pity TNA, because I'm like, oh, what a shame they're getting shafted in this deal. No. They got into bed with the devil. They deal with the consequences. If they didn't know, there was no reason for them to not know what was going to happen, because there are precedents, decades of precedents with WWE entering partnerships with other promotions. And it usually ends up with the promotion being assimilated, bought out, or crushed into oblivion. Signed off the map. Give us the tapes. We don't need you anymore. There's no other way to frame this, as Carlos Silva is a bozo. There's just no other way. He goes out, gets in touch with these promotions, reach out to him, I should say. They're like, we'd like to book your talent. We want to book these guys. These are the rates. And they're gonna fly in and they're gonna get a nice little extra pay. And he agrees to it all. TNA, the TNA office agrees to everything. They even fucking work out the creative all the way to the finish. And then he pulls the plug. There's rumblings going on in the TNA locker room that they are not happy with this decision. That they are not happy that they likely are going to start losing dates because TNA will no longer approve them to go around anywhere. A lot of people who are not okay with that. But you know, probably Carlos is going to sit them down and say, listen, we signed you to a very generous 6-month deal. You have to understand that during those 6 months, you're working for, my priority is you working for me. Don't forget, a lot of these people are like on extremely short deals. Extremely short deals. At the start of the year, when they were trying to re-sign everyone to get, to make sure that they had some talent locked in for the kickoff of the AMC show, it was found out that they were signing up people for 3-4 months. There's going to be a lot of these contracts that are coming up, if not have been coming or have come up. There's a lot of people who are going to be out of contracts within the next couple of weeks. It's preposterous. But that's ultimately the lesson here, is that this guy is an absolute stooge for WWE. He cannot wait for Nick Khan to give him a call and say, hey, Los, we've got a spot for you. Come on up, brother. And he will be jumping and giggling and kicking his heels the entire way, because that's how it goes with bozos like this guy. Incredible stuff. And it sucks. It sucks for the shows that we're looking forward to having this TNA talent. It sucks that they won't be able to partake, that they won't be able to benefit from the presence of having a Leon Slater versus Ricochet at the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Show. Come on. Like, can anyone just fucking lighten up? So there you go. Stooge, bozo, bitch-made. All words that remind me of Carlos Silva. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since I recorded that bit about TNA pulling talent from independent shows, and right now I'm not recording live. I'm not streaming live. In fact, I'm recording just some exclusive audio for the Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast here. And since that recording and now, well, Pat Buck issued a statement, and I feel like this is a nice little bow to sort of wrap up this story for now, put a nice little pin in it, because it does wrap everything up here, right? Like I said, he issued a statement, Pat Buck did, specifically regarding TNA blocking the MJF versus Nick Nemeth match that was supposed to happen in his promotion, right, at Creative Pro Wrestling. And he forwarded a statement to PW Insider, and I'm going to read it off here. I usually don't speak on things like this, but this one's too ridiculous to ignore. TNA, specifically Carlos Silva, forced a change to the main event of our Create a Pro show 3 weeks out after it was already approved and promoted. Not sure who that helps. Create a Pro is a training school with a promotion focused on developing talent while running consistent live events. We're a school, a dojo, and a mom and pop business with just 2 dads. Live events are a necessary training tool, and they're disappearing, even at the highest levels, because they're not as cost effective and the money is in television. In a direct way, we are providing a service for your talent to make money and keep their skills sharp. Do you not see that? We train wrestlers for wrestling companies, and now a wrestling company has stepped in and hurt another wrestling company that helps wrestlers get to wrestling companies. Makes perfect sense. Maybe I'm the only one missing something. I'm annoyed, as it's hard to ignore how unnecessary and honestly how cringe this situation is. And to be fair, talent wasn't pulled. But altering a main event match like that on our limited stage has the same impact. Anyone who has actually promoted shows understands that. When something changes that affects another promoter's show, you make it right. Whether that means sending talent, strengthening the card, or finding a way to return value. You just don't create the problem and walk away from it. That did not happen here. And if any attempt is made now to make it right, it's a bit too late. You meet with people with grace not chaos. Create a Pro isn't a competing media company. It's a training ground that built its own platform to develop talent. No TV deal, no streaming, and we're not attached to any bigger company yet. Between Create a Pro, Wrestle Pro, we run around 25 events a year and reinvest back into us, our leases, rings, and the equipment needed to put on shows. Equipment that, at one point, your company needed to rent to operate in this market. And at another point, when your company needed content and additional matches, talent was placed on Create a Pro and Wrestle Pro shows because there wasn't enough content to support it. Did anyone let you know about a past positive relationship? Years ago, your company used our students for extra work in a meaningful way. Now it looks more like carrot dangling, ring crew, and helping with catering, but that's an entirely different conversation. Create a Pro has been a pipeline and a support system to just about every major company in wrestling. Most people know that, in parentheses. Unless you ask the WWE ID program, then we apparently don't exist. Wow. Pat shooting from the hip here. I'm willing to believe Carlos may not know who I am, and that's fine. But if you're in an executive position, you should probably understand the room you're operating in and the etiquette that comes with it. Maybe Tony Khan can give a quick crash course on how to protect your brand while still helping the overall scene. Ooh. It's times like this I'm glad to work for someone who actually champions the entire sport, not tries to shrink it. And yeah, I'm on the payroll, but these words are from experience, not influence. And at the end of the day, we'll adjust like we always do. But if the goal is to grow this industry or even your own company, this isn't the way to do it. Keep it up. Pat Buck. Create a Pro founder / trainer. Of course, he was at some point he started, as you could tell in the statement, he started to speak directly about Carlos Silva or speak directly to Carlos Silva, I should say. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, I'm starting to think that people don't really respect Carlos Silva all that much. They kind of, I don't think they like the guy all that much. There isn't much more to discuss that we haven't already discussed in the segment you just listened to, other than there's a bunch of stuff here in what Pat Buck says that just confirms a lot of things that we thought. That the idea was that the talent was pulled without, not the talent was pulled, but the main event was changed and nothing was done to try and make it better. It really does underscore how much of a big deal that this was with the promotion, because like Pat Buck points out, that's a tongue twister I wasn't expecting. Like Pat Buck, let me try that again. Like Pat Buck points out, they're not a media company. They don't have like this huge TV deal. They're not directly competing. The independents serve. The independence and especially a training school serves to create the generation of tomorrow. If anything, TNA should be bright enough to be like, well, maybe it would be nice for us to be in good relationships with them, because this might be the kind of lifeblood we need. This is the kind of stuff that would allow us to continue to grow. But Carlos Silva is not a wrestling promoter. This is a guy who used to work in the sports division at Anthem, if I'm not mistaken. Doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't understand how the business works. So of course he's going to pull bullshit like this. And then on top of that, well, he's a geek. So at the same time, he's he bends the knee to WWE and he's a bit of a geek. So what do you want from me at this point? This is who he is. And Pat Buck underscoring past relationships that TNA has had with Create a Pro, saying, hey, you know what? You've used our equipment in the past. We've supplied you with rings and whatnot. Like, what the hell are we doing here, Carlos? This this is not the right way of doing things in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's crazy, just to wrap this up, because, again, there's not much more to add here, but I did it. Pat Buck did point out something here about, Tony Khan giving, this was the line here. Tony Khan giving a quick crash course, could give Carlos a quick crash course on how to protect your brand while still helping the overall scene. It's fascinating to me how Tony Khan will be put through the ringer in all of these media outlets and all of these, all the usual typical crowd of goons who will constantly belittle him and make fun of him because he hasn't come up in the business. He hasn't been doing this for 20 years or whatnot. And I say we, but not, let me see. There's a lot of people who still call him a money mark at this point, right? Without even understanding what's going on. They will belittle Tony for not understanding anything about the business, or at least supposing that he doesn't understand anything. Yet he shows time and time again that he has a deep understanding of how the wrestling business works. And Carlos Silva here will turn around and will do something absolutely preposterously goonish that goes against the very essence of supporting the larger wrestling business as a promotion that is in a better financial spot. Regardless of how much money you're making with your media deal, you are in a better financial spot than Create a Pro Wrestling. They'll just come in and they'll pull things like it will just throw things around without any consideration of the real world impact that these decisions have on these tiny promotions. So who's the fool now? Who's the guy who doesn't understand a goddamn thing? Exactly. Carlos Silva is the answer. Carlos Silva is once again the correct answer to all of this. So again, standards for Tony Khan don't necessarily apply, or AEW in general don't apply to TNA. And it's crazy because this is the kind of shit that WWE fans and all the other bad faithers will accuse Tony Khan of being. Carlos Silva is filling that role. And of course, he's not being called out because he's under the protection of the WWE umbrella. I mean, after all, TNA, the true national number 2, right? Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. I wanted to share this with you, wanted to read this, and I had a few more thoughts. We're about done talking about Carlos Silva, the geek. Carlos, the geek Silva. We're done for now talking about him. We're done, but just for now. Just for now. Guys like Carlos, it will always seem to find a way back into our mind space, so it'll happen sooner than later. I want to talk about La Catalina, who's gone from CMLL and is likely heading to AAA. And we are going to read the report from Cubs fan, the Lucha Blog guy, who has been on top of this and gave a very detailed account regarding everything that he has heard, and he'll say it himself in his introductory paragraph. But there's a lot of people who have started covering CMLL because of the AEW connection, and have no idea what they're talking about, have no idea how the dynamics are, and suddenly are reposting, retweeting, aggregating things, and giving out information that is not exactly true, that you could consider to be false. This is again why I sincerely believe when I tell you, when I say it with my whole chest, when I tell you guys and gals and non-binary pals that there is no such thing as an internet wrestling community in 2026. It just doesn't exist. What we have is a bunch of people posting about wrestling on social media. If we had a community, we would not have people going into Cubs fans' mentions on Twitter, challenging everything that he says, calling him an AEW stan. We would sit back and listen to the premier voice of English language lucha libre coverage that has been around for longer than most of these people have been on planet Earth. That's what we'd be doing if we had truly a wrestling community. But what we have is a bunch of people that can just post whatever the fuck they want with the amount of ignorance that they have with their whole chests, thinking that the more confident they sound saying it, the righter they'll be. And there's a lot of that going around. There's also the story about CMLL being aired on Fox 2 in Mexico, which is good, but also not all that interesting. And there's a lot of people who are making it a bigger deal than what it really truly is. But that will probably be a discussion for next stream, because I still want more information before coming out swinging. So when it comes to La Catalina and her departure and why she's leaving and so on and so forth, I've seen wild fucking things and people starting to think that they're real. I have decided that I am going to trust Cubs because everyone else is probably out to lunch. CMLL announced on Tuesday that Catalina will no longer be part of their roster as of April the 1st. Multiple sources have told me that Catalina will debut in AAA this Saturday. It may have broken on social media by the time you read this. She will become the first wrestler to move from CMLL to AAA since WWE announced its purchase of the company nearly a year ago. It's only been a year ago when you think about it. And it's only been a year ago. And it feels like it's been 10. It's crazy. Catalina's final match was on March 31st in Arena Coliseo, Guadalajara. CMLL's official position is that they offered Catalina a contract and she chose to leave. They would have been happy to keep her. Catalina has not said anything. CMLL putting out that news was to get in front of Catalina showing up in AAA, but word of her departure had already started traveling on Monday night. I'm assuming it is out or would have been out soon anyway. I don't feel like I'm breaking news here as much as saving the effort of writing it. I would have just DM'd someone and told them, but I figured the scoop people would have it anyway. This is not a well-kept secret. La Catalina is the pickup AAA's needed. La Catalina is the pickup AAA needed since WWE took over. She's not the biggest possible name to jump, but she's one who fills the most obvious need. WWE TKO believes in having strong, marketable women stars. The AAA roster they took over did not have many women that fit WWE's conventional thought process about female stars. Catalina herself didn't seem to fit what WWE was looking for during her previous ill-fated stint. Catalina did a fantastic job of finding herself as a wrestler and a person after leaving. She's a great character to play off Las Toxicas, and more valuable to TKO in that role than even Persephone or Olympia would be. This is a great AAA move on paper. They still need depth. Maybe Julissa Mexa and Valentina Reyes next if they're repairing relations with former Latina NXT wrestlers, but it's addressing their biggest weakness. I think this is a good move for La Catalina too. She has a good chance of being the top star of the division. She and Flammer will probably be the title feud for the foreseeable future. She's got a better path getting back to US TV if that's her goal. Catalina worked Ring of Honor tapings in 2025, but AEW had taken a pass on her outside of the Monet title match. Catalina's getting a much easier schedule if she gets the same TV-only contract that Vikingo seems to be on, and that new important signings to AAA would seem to be on. CMLL's statement made it clear they would have liked to bring her back, suggesting she may be able to return if it doesn't work out, and if she doesn't say something to annoy them in the meantime. Most of all, Catalina got into wrestling because she found Trish Stratus in a WWE video game. That's who she wanted to be. That's where she wanted to be when her dream started. The dream went bad along the way, but I doubt it ever completely left her. There is a slight problem with that portion where the dream went bad. As recently as September, Catalina was doing lengthy "I'm never going back to WWE" bits and interviews, and I remember that. I even think we mentioned it here as well. Money and opportunity can change those feelings, I know, but no one likes being perceived as someone going back on their own words. I expect that one of the first outside the ring interviews Catalina will do will be to reconcile all that by explaining why this is different and how things will go better. Catalina leaving CMLL hurts CMLL, though I think the perception there will outweigh the reality. Wow, Cubs. will outweigh the reality. Catalina and Persephone are the women that more casual CMLL fans have been stuck on. Maybe they know Olympia now. Certainly they're aware of Tessa Blanchard, but it's really those two that seem to capture most attention, and one of them is gone now. Catalina was also at the shows, but she was a bigger social media draw than someone selling a lot of tickets for matches. What CMLL is going to miss most is her youth. Catalina was a young person who felt young in a promotion that likes feeling old, and a women's division that is even older. You can see her influence on Scotty and Kira, and part of why I think Kira is the next logical WWE target. CMLL struggles to create female wrestlers as well as it does men. They didn't really create Catalina. They caught a break that Sarah Stock and Taya, Valkyrie, nudged her to CMLL and away from AAA, but Catalina was wallpaper over a CMLL problem that still isn't fixed. Garra Negra and Kira may be the new wallpaper, but they're not going to be able to find free agent talent to cover their problem forever. Both AAA and CMLL are in the same place here, needing more female wrestlers and being unable to develop them on their own. AAA is going to be able to pay their way out of it as long as they're a TKO company. Maybe that's paying CMLL wrestlers. Maybe that's finding people from other disciplines. But CMLL is not going to spend its money that way, so they have to figure out another way of doing it. So that's the long and short of it there, and some very insightful observations at the same time. So essentially, if we recap here, Catalina left because she just got a better offer. She just got a better offer than CMLL, and CMLL and CMLL was like, sure, yeah, well, we'd like, here's our offer. We'd like to keep you. And apparently this all ended really, really well, as opposed to the Stephanie Vaquer situation. This ended it ended well. It ended the through the front door, as they like to say. And Catalina is welcome back whenever and if ever, like Cubs says, as long as she doesn't say anything to upset the CMLL brass, she will be welcome back there. I can't help but wonder what came first. Would it have been the fact that Persephone got a dual contract before her, or that Tony Khan just wasn't interested in using her more than he did in Ring of Honor? And then the question, let's say that scenario is the one, right? And we're shooting this shit, we're speculating here, right? Let's say the Ring of Honor situation is the one that happened, right? What if during her tenure there, they sort of figure out, they see some signs where Catalina has a dream to be in WWE. Look, Cubs pointed it out himself. She wanted to be a wrestler because of Trish Stratus. So she has the dream of being in WWE. It worked. She tried out that one time when she was hanging around Sin Cara, and that didn't quite work out. So she comes around this time. This time she's like, I'm going to make this work this time, because she's always been a WWE fan at heart type of thing. And maybe people in Ring of Honor were like, well, her end goal is WWE, so there's no real point in putting some effort into her, right? I mean, we have to have learned, when I say we, AEW has to have learned at some point with these wrestlers whose end goals is to be in WWE. They have to have learned at this point to sort of find signs to suss them out and see what their intents are so that they don't end up with another Stephanie Vaquer situation or another Mariah May. You know, the Stephanie Vaquer situation was objectively worse than the optics wise than the Mariah May thing. But you know, like nonetheless, they have to be cognizant about that, right? Because nonetheless, WWE as a brand is much more impactful in Mexico than All Elite Wrestling is, which is normal. Like, we have to acquiesce that whether you like them or not, WWE has a 40-year start on AEW on that front. So, you know, of course it has it has that cachet of being the big time even for people in Mexico, and you know, people leaving Lucha Libre to come and make it in the United States in WWF, WWE. I mean, that's always kind of been a thing, right? So it makes me wonder. It's like, could that have been a situation where it's just like during the Ring of Honor tapings, they kind of saw something there and was like, hey, you know what? This girl, she kind of wants to do WWE. If she wants to be the next Trish Stratus, go ahead, do your thing, type of thing, right? And maybe this was also an impetus to sign and lock down Persephone too, because everything that Cubs here made so much sense to the point that I hadn't even thought about it. Like, it makes so much sense about the status of the women's divisions, both in CMLL and AAA, and how they're perceived and how little investment there really is in there, and how it's a challenge for both promotions to revitalize and get, you know, have new faces, fresh new faces there as well. It's very interesting to me, and it's something that I had not thought of, and Cubs made an excellent point here, because look, I have always thought that Catalina had more of a sports entertainment sheen to her presentation in Arena Mexico than anyone else on the roster, than any other woman on the CMLL roster. As much as Persephone is good, there was something in her presentation and her natural charisma that just had Catalina pop off more. So I can't say I'm necessarily surprised. And honestly, I think she's going to thrive more in AAA than she will be in CMLL. I think it is a good move for her. I think it's a good move for AAA as well. And I agree with Cubs. I think she's going to end up in an environment that will use her to her strengths. She's going to be a novelty there because there's not a lot of marketable, charismatic young women wrestling right now in AAA. So I think she's going to work. She's going to work particularly well, and they're going to take a shine to her. And I think she's going to I think she's going to be big. Legitimately, I think she's going to have a really good career in AAA. And you know, if she ever were to walk down a little further, cross the border, go up into the United States, I'm sure she'd be glad to end up on main roster as well. But it's interesting how Cubs pointed out that this also exposes the problem with the CMLL women's division, that CMLL has trouble developing women wrestlers on their own, that they oftentimes have to go to the outside. And how successful will they be doing it if they end up having to pay for it? That's not necessarily the strategy CMLL wants to do or can even do. There you go. I mean, that's the gist of it. I think it gives a pretty good vision of what happened. Everything else is just like speculation and you know, minute details. But you know, the broad strokes is that they offered her a contract. She turned it down. Probably got a better offer from AAA. She took it, and everything was ended amicably. And the door is probably open for her to return if ever it was the case. But something tells me that La Catalina is going to be absolutely fine in AAA. I think she's going to be absolutely okay. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all so very much for joining me and for listening to the very end here. You get yourself a prize. The possibility of leaving a like or a 5-star review or a 5-star rating, if you haven't done it already. What a prize. I will be back tomorrow with a brand spanking new edition of the Dynamite review, AEW Dynamite review. So it's going to be the big Dynamite. It's shaping up to be a big one too. So the big Dynamite post Dynasty. That's the one we're going to be covering. So hopefully you'll show up for that. It's available on all the podcast platforms and whatnot. And then later on Thursday evening, I will be streaming live on YouTube. So if you want to join us for that, it's always a good time. Otherwise, we'll be back next week for another edition of the podcast. Thank you all so very much for being here, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And I will see you next time.